I'm Carter Myers. Welcome back to another episode of Two Dogs on a Leash. And today we probably have on our most special guest of all time, my longtime teacher, Mr. Davis.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Kind of taking it back, I wanted to go from the beginning. First off, where did you grow up? Because I feel like that always influences somebody's character, especially being that you grew up somewhere far away.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in San Diego, born and raised out in California, and kind of spent my whole life out there. I did travel a lot. I was actually just talking to somebody today about that my parents were both teachers, and so we took off in the summers and would go on like 8, 9, 10 week road trips. And so I've been blessed to have been to a lot of places, but then when I was kind of looking for schools, I had been looking all over the place and wasn't really sure what what spot was going to be best for me. And then I actually had a friend who his dad had a connection at Ole Miss, and he had come out the summer before our senior year of high school, and was just kind of talking it up to me and saying, hey, it's a great campus, it's that it's affordable, and that you should look at it. And so I started looking at it, and I knew that I wanted to do sports journalism. That's what my background is in, and they have a great journalism program at Ole Miss, and so I really looked at it, and then it ended up that just with like my test scores and GPA, I got almost a full ride, and I've been here 10 years, so found my place.
For the Ole Miss journalism aspect of it, were you just looking into colleges that had the, maybe the sports culture that Oxford does, or the sports culture that we had more specifically in high school, or were you just covering sports as broadly as you could when you first got here?
So I think a couple things go into that. When I was looking for a school, I knew that I wanted some kind of sports culture, which is why I ended up, I had been looking at journalism schools. I'd been looking at Missouri and Michigan and UCLA and Berkeley and some of those schools. And I think my final three ended up being, it was Ole Miss, UCLA, and then the University College of Freiburg in Germany.
Right.
That was another weird one that just kind of randomly came on my radar. So I was all over the place and didn't really know what I wanted. And then my senior year of high school, my dad and I came out to the LSU game over Thanksgiving break. And I watched Ole Miss beat Leonard Fournette and LSU in a great game in the rain, and I was sold. I knew there was nowhere else I wanted to be. And so I came out here then and worked for the Daily Mississippian, the student newspaper, and covered, I was the beat reporter for volleyball and women's basketball, and then helped kind of cover just kind of other stories as they broke. I covered DK Metcalf's injury and some of those things. And then when I got a more professional job working at the Oxford Eagle in town, I was covering high school sports as well as county government and some general news stuff.
I think we talked a little bit about what your job kind of entailed as a journalist, especially with Oxford Eagle. I know you said the pay wasn't necessarily great, but trying to get into what it was like being a journalist for that short or long period of time, however long that was. Just what was that like?
Yeah, I mean it is a lot of work, and it's I think that's in any industry you're going to feel like you're not getting paid enough, but journalism I think is one that is just because of the nature of the industry and where it's at right now, you really got to love it, right? And you got to grind and work hard and put in your time in order to make any kind of money there. But I just day to day, I would wake up and kind of comb through social media, comb through PR pages and seeing what Oxford Police had put out, what the city was putting out. I had some contacts in town that if stuff was happening, they would kind of reach out to me and say, hey, this is something that you should look at, and then would try and get in contact and get some more information. But I think it's very different being at a smaller newspaper like this, where you kind of, the number one goal, right, was having fresh content available at all times. And so it's, you kind of just have to allocate your time, if that makes sense, right? That it's, you're kind of being pulled in so many different directions. And I knew that I dedicated a lot of time to sports because that was, my passion. And so you just got to kind of find time to get to those stories that really matter and spend the time to investigate and do those kind of things, while also putting out the more kind of day-to-day just minutia. And so it's you definitely got to strike a balance. It's hard to find sometimes.
When you're saying that you have to kind of go in there and investigate, are you physically going in to talk to people or talk to as many people as possible? And then how do you kind of take that interview with them or those questions you ask them and then kind of translate it to writing it down or in an article or like in the newspaper?
Yeah, so it's again, just the nature of the Oxford Eagle. I did a lot of stuff over the phone, right? Because there were a lot of times where I was the only reporter working at the paper. And so I didn't have time to be driving all over town and tracking stuff. But, I think the ones that, where it really mattered, right, where I felt like there was something there that needed to be reported, I did go and, went out to, businesses or to Chamber of Commerce meetings or, Board of Aldermen, Board of Supervisors, those kind of things. And then basically my process was, I recorded everything, right? That I was, and I was upfront about that I would say, as soon as I sat down with somebody, I would open up my voice memos on my phone and I would say, hey, is it okay if I record this conversation? Because, I don't know if y'all know this, but technically in Mississippi, it is legal to record someone without their permission. Mississippi is a one-party state, but you always want to be above board, right, with what you're doing in journalism. And so, I always would say that, right, I would record everything. I would put it into like an Otter or something like that would transcribe, right, my interviews. And then those, you still got to be careful with that because then you don't want to pull quotes directly from that transcription because they're not, always the most accurate. But basically, right, I always wanted a transcript of whatever conversation was happening, so that I could refer back to stuff and make sure that I was being as accurate as possible. Because you're going to make mistakes in journalism, right? And I made mistakes that I had to retract. But you want to be as accurate as possible, and you want everybody that you're going into business with and interviewing to know that you're doing it honestly, right? And that you're not going to try and twist their words in some way.
And going from that position to kind of covering Oxford High School sports, just what was that decision and how did you make that transition?
So it was teaching was something that kind of fell into my lap. And so I was finishing up at the Oxford Eagle and was kind of reaching out to some of the coaches and administrators that I had made connections with while I was here and just letting them know, hey, I'm going to be gone. And some of the athletic directors over here at Oxford, Coach Beard and Coach Bauman, they actually reached out and kind of said, we don't want no coverage of our kids, right? They were asking me who was going to step in and cover sports, and I told them I don't think anyone really was. And so they kind of asked me to come and interview for this role where I was, working with athletics with the broadcast program, and then teaching students as well. Obviously, with me, it's a heavy sports influence just because of who I am. And so I kind of carved out, this role where we expanded the broadcast program, right? We were trying to get to more events and cover as much as possible. And then also teaching this digital media class that, ended up being a little short-lived because I think we're going to the video production. But I was happy kind of with, what we were able to do in a short time frame just in terms of, adapting to that new curriculum and trying to put some stuff in place.
I know you kind of have some news for a lot of the students or just everyone in general that you are going to be leaving OHS. Just what are your plans for the future, and are you interested in continuing teaching maybe somewhere else? I
am. I'm not sure what I want to do, honestly. That I To be honest, I never wanted to be a teacher. Both my parents were teachers, and I always kind of told myself my whole life, there's no way I'm ever going to do it. And then ended up falling into it, and I loved it, and I love being with y'all and working with y'all. And so I applied for a similar kind of broadcast position at my old high school. But I'm looking at getting back into the sports journalism stuff, and so I've been applying for TV and newspaper jobs and looking more in that field.
So are you trying to balance doing that also with being a teacher, or are you more interested in one field or the other?
That is a good question that I got to figure out. So I think I definitely, I've talked about this with some people, that I very much enjoy teaching. I love working with kids. I love like just those kind of light bulb moments where you see something click for somebody that makes your week as a teacher. But the one thing that I struggled with a little bit was not having work of my own that I was kind of proud of being able to put out there. And that's where I kind of, the broadcast, I was able to scratch that itch a little bit, right? Just in terms of, putting the effort in to make that look like a professional broadcast and make that a quality, piece. And so I think that's where I, am looking more into the journalism side of things again, is because I want to get back to that where I'm producing my own kind of content.
I feel like you going back to your high school and having that broadcast position seems kind of like a dream job, though. The fact that that position would even be open is kind of
no, it's one that the position used to exist and then was cut with rounds of budget cuts a while back, and they've been trying to bring it back, and so it would be interesting. I've also, I joke at that because I have some of y'all that call me coach every once in a while, even though I'm technically not a coach. And I've had some folks that asked me about coaching, swim or other things, and that would be one that my old water polo coach actually is getting up there, and so I don't know if he might, I might be, you could convince me to coach water polo, so I don't know, that might be in the cards.
I feel like, the question, but for you, we got to kind of mix it up, since I'm not necessarily going to ask you what student you like the most, but if you had to put one staff member and another staff member on an island with you for 6 months, and you got to try and survive, who are you choosing and what?
Ooh, that's tough. I don't know. So my instinct is, I would want somebody funny who can kind of keep things light and be personable. But I'm also trying to think of some folks that might have some survival skills that would be able to help. And so, honestly, I think Mr. Sabatier just being so handy, and he just kind of knows a lot of things about random topics.
Is that Joe or
Charlie Sabatier? I was engineering Mr. Sabatier. That I think he just has a wide array of knowledge that would come in handy for something like that. And so I would say that. I would say him. And then let me throw Chef Hughes out there. Let's eat well while we're on an abandoned island. I'm sure he could scrounge some stuff up and make something out of nothing.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been a great interview.
Of course. Happy to be here.
All right.